Welcome to Nintendo Voice Chat for the week of December 17th, 2015. I'm your host, Jose Otero, and this is the last episode of the year. How about that? Joining me once again is...
sad. We did it.
We did it again. Per Schneider and Brian Altano.
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's it? That's
Yeah, we're getting right to the news.
It's the end of the year. I'm just falling asleep.
You get one wrap at the end of the year.
For a week and then come back to work.
I'll give you 3 at the start of next year.
Well, to close out the year, Nintendo had a couple of announcements for some cool things. I guess let's go a little out of order here and start with talking about the Super Mario Maker update, which was revealed this morning, right before the show. So we'll have P-Switch enabled doors, bumpers, apparently a Fire Koopa clown car. And I think this is really cool. Like just the idea of adding these items, more items to Mario Maker, which at the end of the day, we've talked about on the show, needs to be a platform of ideas.
Yeah, and the Switch door is really cool. So what it does is, when you hit a P-Switch, a portal will appear, a door that is otherwise hidden. So that actually creates more of a conditional puzzle setup for Mario Maker, which is something like people create workarounds, like hide certain, use like the coin blocks or the coins to shut off the path until you use the P-Switch. But this actually creates a door, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, if you think back to where this originated, which was Super Mario Bros. 3, that was some of the trickiest levels in that game.
Yeah,
were in the ghost house areas, and now you can make those. I think what's really interesting too is that they're starting to put in things that really had no place in Mario, like new things, which is so interesting because
bumper?
Yeah, that weird donut. That's a good way to call it. Because I feel like the rule set that created for this game from the jump was, let's make something that works across all 3 games, and if it doesn't, let's find a solution for it. Like, there was an 8-bit ghost house on the NES version of Super Mario Bros. 1, but they figured out a way to make one of those. But now they're just kind of like, well, it's out there. We did all that by the rules stuff. Here's a donut.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It really opens up that we might start seeing new power-ups in this game that we've never seen before.
So we actually have a quote from Mr. Oshino. We got this from Nintendo this morning, and apparently this new bumper item, he says, we added this item to further expand the jump mechanics of the game. We hope that players will create thrilling, maybe even half-biting courses filled with jumps. Having said that enough, players are free to find their own uses for it. It may be a simple item, but it holds an infinite number of possibilities, and we're hoping players will find uses for it that we never imagined. It's a really cool Switch. I mean, I feel like the P-Switch doors, though, there is an outline. Yeah. And I feel like, so he actually addresses that, where he says, we struggle with the decision right up until the end. For people making the course, not having the outline would be best. However, on the other hand, for people playing, if there's no outline, they may not realize that they have to search for a door and won't have any hints in terms of where to look. I found that interesting just because I don't think Mario games ever really... I mean, we're never really given the clue. We kind of figure it out.
And do you know why?
I thought that was weird.
Because they were designed intuitively.
Exactly. They were great level
exactly
designers.
Yeah.
And not to say that the users created stuff isn't going to be, but a lot of it isn't going to be.
A lot will be annoying, and I was going to bring that up. You have to use the hidden doors for good and not for evil, right? Like if there's just like this, if it becomes frustrating to find the exit, it's an issue. The outline actually alleviates that. The puzzle is instantly clear. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, there's a door. I don't need to try and jump over this gap, which could lead to death in badly designed levels. You need the door. Ergo, I need the Switch. So now you start the search for a Switch, so you're looking in blocks and everything.
And that becomes the puzzle,
I get why that makes sense.
No, I agree too. Especially after reading his answer and then talking to you guys, I do feel like, okay, well, this is obviously why you did it, and therefore let's, I'm just really happy with how this thing continues to grow. And if anything, Splatoon and Smash are examples, and I'm not saying this will be the case with Mario Maker, but both, and even Mario Kart to a degree, to a lesser extent, but this still panned out, were supported for roughly 6 months to a year. Splatoon is still getting content, although that's about to end. That game came out in May.
I think grand total will be a year and a half from start to finish for Smash.
Smash got a full year. Mario Kart, it was spread out over a year. It was 2 content packs. It seems like it took a while to make. But yeah, Nintendo's just hitting their stride with like just supporting these games and keeping people talking about this game. It seems like the strategy is we don't have a ton of games, so let's just have people talk about this for a while.
You know what's really interesting? So I went into into I booted up Mario Maker last weekend. I went in, I got notifications that there are all these new courses that Nintendo made, and that are there to play. I didn't get a lot of activity on the levels I had already created. It seems like once your levels get a little old, unless you keep on creating, they may not be discovered
or
as
unless
much
you
anymore,
have
right?
unless you have a lot of followers who will then jump on and play those levels. You're right.
Yeah, but it's and it's obviously hard to build up followers and announce a new level and all that within the platform. And overwhelmingly, the music levels and the automatic levels are completely filling up the charts now, right? Which is an issue, but it's part of the audience being very young, really loving that kind of content, right? So, but I'm not going to change my strategy and make levels like that just to cater to that, to curry the favor.
There's enough of those.
But definitely, this web interface is going to help alleviate that. Like just having a way to bookmark levels and pass things on.
Yeah, so that helps. But what struck me was, so I went in there and I have like 4 unfinished levels where I was playing around with concepts, and then I'm like, hey, am I gonna build a level now? And then I'm like, I got all these other games on other platforms to play, and then I ended up shutting it down and going away. Now though, when the new items are added, not only is there a reason to boot up the game and see what they feel like, you will get an idea on how to use them. And I feel like that inspiration is really needed with a game like that, where every couple of months or so, you go back and you have a reason to play it.
Yeah.
And I really love that. And even if an update is just one item, that is enough for me to get me back into creating levels and trying it out.
And that seems to be the strategy. Like, keep people talking, keep adding things. Like, with Splatoon, that was one of the reasons no one could stop talking about that game.
Yep, right.
It just turned into, oh man, a new map. There's 2 new maps in Splatoon coming. Like, this just happened last night.
I did not expect that. That's a really nice surprise.
They were done.
I saw a Vine the other day that was basically someone had created a Mario Maker level where you were forced into getting this power up that was a little, like, the girder character, that bouncy girder guy, and he goes into a pipe, and the entire level is made of these bouncy girders, and you can't tell where his character is because he's the same as every other element. And I'm like, this is now months after this game was out, and it's still fascinating that people are finding cool little tricks like this.
I retweeted that. That was from Game Center CX had a marathon where he played that game for 2 hours, and so he goes into a pipe, and he just gets lost in all the girders.
It's like fascinating.
All the catapults, and it's just like, what happened?
And what I like about these new items is that if you read the descriptions, each one of them is vastly different from the other, right? One of them is sort of assisting platforming, one is assisting puzzles, and the clown car has like a charge shot,
which means
into
a shooter.
It's a shooter. They're like, here, make a shmup. Like, that's really cool, Like, I love stuff like that. So hopefully, I am a shmup. Hopefully that wanes people off of the sort of automatic music levels a little bit and gets people digging around into some other ideas. I think that's happen. You don't think so?
No. It's like YouTube, right? Like, once the audience on YouTube found a format of game video that they liked, it becomes the predominant form of entertainment, especially for younger players. And I think Mario Maker has become that. Little Big Planet, by the way, was, hey, look at how many franchises you can replicate with this game. That's what the MacGuffin became for Little Big Planet. For Mario Maker, it's absolutely music and automatic levels.
No, and if anything, the last note on this is just that even the music levels have evolved, where initially it was just, okay, here is the occasional piece of art for like Seinfeld or Pokemon or whatever. Now it's like this elaborate tapestry of just really, really well done art. The minute you click on a music level, like, you see this beautiful mural that you're just like, wow, that's impressive. And those weren't there when this game launched. So it's really cool still to see people taking it that far.
And some of the better music levels actually now have a little bit of a challenge, where you're running at the top of the screen while the music plays at the bottom, or vice versa.
Right.
But you actually have to avoid enemies.
It's not just hold
so
right.
You can't just run right on a conveyor belt and make the music play. So there's definitely, I don't want to put them down. They're like, some of them are really, really creative and cool. It's just that they crowd out everything else. And so that's, the game's got to evolve a little bit.
So speaking of a crowd, Smash Brothers is getting a crowd of new content up until February. They just had a Smash Brothers Direct while I was in Japan. The final. Yeah, I was on a plane when this all happened.
I heard, what I heard is that the final Direct, I asked Nintendo whether it was final as in Final Fantasy or really the final.
It's funny you say that, because I feel like after watching it, and I don't get me wrong, I'm excited so we have another Fire Emblem character coming in the form of Corrin, who is the protagonist for Fire Emblem Fates, a game that is not out yet here, but that is out in Japan. And by the way, Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Smash, has a huge love of Fire Emblem right now. There was a Fire Emblem 25th anniversary event. No, there was check this out. There was a music event. He was the host. He has been talking about it like nonstop. I almost feel like he just wants to, like, he should just make a Fire Emblem because he's turning Smash into it, and some people don't like that.
Well, there've been some feedback that, and I actually agree with that. I think when Nintendo let you vote on what characters to add, like Fire Emblem was not high on the list because the franchise is so well represented.
And if anything,
then the addition of at least in the US, the addition of a character from a game that's not out yet feels like marketing.
It's always been marketing, though. Look at what's happening in terms of Super Mario Maker and these costume characters. They're always related to games that just came out. With Triforce Heroes, they did it. With Mario and Luigi RPG, it came out in Japan. There's a costume
the BMW.
For that. The BMW, because they want you to get a GLA.
Not a BMW.
Right, so let's. Nice, good job. But we'll move forward. I think Nintendo is adopting this technique where they are trying to market future titles through DLC. We are seeing that more and more. The other characters being Bayonetta was the voted in character according to the Smash,
which is really awesome.
That's great.
And came with the asterisk of the characters that were possibly like the what was the wording? It was something like of characters that were a possibility or actually able to be realized.
Yes.
This is one of
the people that returned our calls, basically.
It was the sorry Chewbacca is not a realistic choice answer. Right?
Yeah. Well, because I mean, I would, and it kind of sucks that we'll never see that top 5 or that top 10.
I would love to see that.
Like, I kind of wish there was one footnote at the very end that was kind of like, by the way, and I thought the ending of the direct was beautiful. Like, it almost made me like, it gave me goosebumps to think about, like, we're here, we finished, this game is done, it's been growing, and it's fully realized. I think for some miraculous reason he still looks 15 years old. That man does not age. I don't know how.
Right.
But no, I'd love to see him work on something new. But I am a little bummed that we didn't get to see the full list, especially because we saw tweets from people at Microsoft being like, oh, we'd love to put Banjo-Kazooie in there and stuff like that.
No, I know. Yeah, it is a shame, but I think that for them, the safety net of not showing that list is not getting a lot of anger. But it's
you should
weird.
run a poll in the future. Just have a write-in poll, let people vote on IGN, then we tell people which ones would have won.
Man, don't do that. You should
totally
see some of the emails we get with suggestions for characters.
So I got a little upset that there was one more Fire Emblem character. I'm like, oh really? Do we need like a 7th sword fighter in this game? The 6th or whatever.
Fire Emblem character.
But I mean, it was sandwiched between Cloud and Bayonetta, which is like, and the fact that this game has what, like 58, 59 characters
now. But that
now?
said, I would have swapped Bayonetta's announcement with Cloud. I would have ended the last direct with Bayonetta as the vote-in character, and maybe the footage wasn't ready in time.
Yeah.
But Cloud to me was this thing that like broke the internet.
Yeah.
And it did feel in some way that this final update for Smash Brothers was a bit unceremonious, because I'm excited for that character being there. I think the attention to detail is fantastic. I mean, have you guys played with as Cloud yet? Cloud is amazing. Like, I love how they worked in the limit break idea. Like, if there's one thing about the team that is involved in making these decisions, is that they are so smart at figuring out a way to make a mechanic from that character's universe work in Smash Brothers. And it's interesting to me that Smash Brothers almost has no. It feels like anything is possible.
Yeah.
Like you could almost do anything with a Smash character and in a Smash game. But yeah, it really. I would have preferred to end this on Cloud and just everyone.
You're totally right.
Yeah. We don't know what the circumstances were and whether some Bayonetta just wasn't ready, but
I'm sure.
I mean, in the end, what a freaking amazing lineup of fighters for a game. Like, and if at this point they're calling it a day and saying, you know what, Sakurai, time to start on the next Smash Brothers, I'm totally fine with that.
Me too.
I cannot wait to see how they pull off that Bayonetta amiibo. There's so many little details and moving parts.
They've already even cleaned her image up a little, because if you look during the Wicked Weave transformation, she's got like half shorts on, whereas before it was like
their hair shorts,
bikini, like weird whatever. And I was just like, thanks for covering that up a little bit, because kids play this game. Just saying,
such an odd character in like the Nintendo-verse.
I know,
like,
it's so funny that character just kind of became aligned with Nintendo first party stuff. The fact that like they were
they funded the sequel.
Yeah, and there were official costumes in the second game, but based on Peach and Samus.
Yeah.
The whole thing's very funny to me.
That thing.
But it's like it's sort of like classic 2015 where we have to cover up a character's legs, but she can shoot guns with her feet.
Yeah.
But I mean, the cool thing is, like, when you look at this roster of characters and you're like, well, I guess we milked every Nintendo franchise ever, and it's just not true.
No, it's
when
not.
you sit down and you're like, well, Splatoon just brought us really cool new characters, right? Like that could easily make it into the full game and not just as costumes. We're talking about like games like Xenoblade, obviously, but also like Box Boy, like some of the smaller kind of like indie-ish Nintendo games. There's just a lot more stuff out there.
I think it's fascinating. We've had how many Smash Brothers games now with no playable Waluigi? Like that's a
Thank
character.
God for that. No, you can. No.
Here, instead, here's 10 more Fire Emblem characters.
I'll take them. Just keep Waluigi out.
But they did find a good way to sort of work around that with the I thought the QR code thing for the Splatoon characters with the Mii Fighter skins is a very smart way to sort of be like, well, these guys aren't in the game, but this is as close as we can get.
It's also borderline trolling, to be honest.
Oh, it is. No, the Geno thing was like when they started playing that music, I got so hyped, and it was like, it's a Mii character. But it is kind of cool to see him again.
But that's where you have something to look forward to the next Smash Brothers. Like a Splatoon stage in Smash with that crazy music could be just so awesome with all the ink effects and everything.
Well, look at Cloud Stage and like how they worked in summons. I was just like, like what?
Yeah.
Like really? And you see like Neo Bahamut, I forget the order for his name, but there's like a path of light that goes through all of Midgar and ends up on that platform, and you're like, good Lord, that's amazing. Like that's great work.
I'm guessing it's like 4 or 5 years tops before we see the next Smash Brothers.
Well,
and I don't even know if it's something that he wants to do. You know?
I hope
he never wants to do it.
I hope that I agree with you that there'll be some time, but I do hope that he does start prepping someone to kind of take the reins for it, and not because he's not good at it, because he's amazing at it. Even though he does kind of dangle in front of people what they want, like people want a Ridley. Oh, Ridley's a stage hazard. Ridley's not a character, and all these kind of explanations for why he feels that he has a certain philosophy. But I do think that at some point, just like with Miyamoto, with Tezuka, with all of these guys who eventually just say, okay, we're done with directing duties, we're going to be producer, which is a bit higher up and is still in charge of overview and oversight, but isn't as hands-on. And I think he needs that. He needs
a successor, and I would hate it if it was 4 or 5 years till the next Smash, because that means we'd have a new console without one of the huge franchises represented earlier on.
Where do you even go from here?
I know.
Where do you go?
No, I think you reset the roster. You go back to the staple characters that were in the earliest Smash Brothers, and then you add new characters. Like we just talked about franchises that weren't represented. There are plenty more. Like even when you go into Zelda and think about who are the characters who've never been in Smash Brothers, like from newly created Linkle to like Tingle to like any of the kind of quirkier.
But all the characters introduced,
Midna, Wolf, all that stuff.
All the characters introduced to Smash now will go on and have gone on to become people's favorites. And if you start stripping those away, you start breaking hearts. It's why people still won't shut up about Snake.
But now you have a DLC strategy day one, and you can actually with all the work that goes into balancing Cloud now at launch and over the next couple of weeks and months. You're going to start off with that with the next Smash Brothers game. You can say Cloud will be available month 2 as a DLC character.
Yeah, but I do.
And you pay Square for the money you make off that DLC character.
No, for sure. But I do think that DLC. I would be curious to see how successful the DLC on Smash was in the end. Like how well did it sell versus other DLC or versus even just being their first time. Because I'm just not convinced that some people stick around that long. I do feel like in a lot of people's minds, a game is still a purchase. I play it, I put it away, and of course we're part of the hardcore or the people who just are so enthusiastic about these products. We keep up with every detail. We buy every update, even if we're tired of the fucking Mii Fighter costumes. And I just cursed, but I'm jet lagged.
That's fine.
But my point though is that I do think that the average consumer isn't thinking that way.
That's because the platform isn't there yet. If you switched on, and first of all, I think Nintendo should have a DLC strategy that includes free releases too, because that obviously works to extend the lifetime of a game, and also works in upselling it to paid DLC, right? Like look at Witcher and some of the other games that do that really well. But if the platform was smarter, if you booted up your Wii U and it said bam, 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 and you get the here comes a new challenger as a beautiful animation when you start up your game, you get excited. You don't want a spam email equivalent in your box and a little blue light blinking.
I like my my gamepad turning into an advertising screen.
Oh yeah, no, but it cannot be like that. It needs to feel as organic and as awesome as when you get the character and unlock it in the game.
But what you're saying also has to be done in moderation, because you don't want to do bring Cloud joins the battle now for $9.99 like that. There's a fine line to walk on that.
I mean, so you went to, for interest of honesty, you were in Japan a few days ago. You interviewed Kojima about him leaving Konami and starting a new game studio where he's going to start new ideas that have nothing to do with his old IPs. Like, I would love to see that happen with Sakurai. Like, have you guys played Kirby's Air Ride?
Yeah.
Okay, not a great game, but if you look at the interface in that game, right, the menus and stuff, they are totally Smash Brothers. The unlockables, the progression system, and I think there's something to that. Keeping all of that stuff and then taking the core gameplay and swapping it from a fighting game to a racing game or a different type of action game.
It had the same kind of reward structure.
Kid Icarus, exactly.
He did it with
and I really love that. So I would love to see that sort of reward structure being applied to, say, a third-person action game or a different. Just a different thing entirely.
Yeah, but
and give him a break.
Sakurai projects, though, are very detailed, and I think that's just his approach to working. Like, it felt like Uprising took forever to come out, and I'm sure part of it was just that perfectionist attitude of, we have to get this right, this has to be this big package. And it's just interesting because as software gets bigger and bigger, and as games become higher and higher in budget, maybe that's not the smartest way to do it anymore.
And that's, I mean, you brought up Kojima, right? Like, think about Yamauchi and Gran Turismo and Kojima and how long it takes for them to make a game, because they are perfectionists about a lot of things.
Sure.
Like, that perfectionism lost Sony the lead with the racing franchises. Forza is the biggest racing franchise now.
That happened.
It changed because of this, and you have to be careful that doesn't happen with more Nintendo franchises. That's why I love, though, the concept, like, if Smash Brothers came out at like $40 with 15 characters or whatever at launch, and then every month you got a new character, some were free, some were pay. I think then you're creating a platform and you're creating a manageable project rather than having to do everything up front.
Well, you saw their they basically had to cut people off at the pass during the direct to be like, so when we shipped Smash Brothers, it was finished. We swear, totally done, and then we did some new stuff afterwards, because I think there's a lot of hesitance now. Like, I'm really into Star Wars Battlefront right now, but a lot of people are like, oh, that game was shipped incomplete, and they're going to add stuff later. I think the last thing on earth they want is to be accused of that same sort of guilt.
But it's not finished.
But some of that comes from entitlement, but also some of that comes from just wanting the most value for what you're buying. And I hear both sides of that. But I will say that, and they're very careful about it. Like, of all the companies I've seen approach DLC, except in the case of Fire Emblem Fates, where we know very much up front that there is DLC, immediately. You're buying the other campaign or you're buying the third campaign ahead of time. There's very few instances of that. But I think that's just part of Sakurai and Sakurai's attitude towards DLC, which he's written about in Famitsu. He said, like, it's wrong to sort of, he feels it's wrong to nickel and dime the consumer with stuff that you started making when you were in production.
Sure.
Like, you put that stuff out after.
They've also given out a couple of things for free. Like, Mewtwo was free for people who had registered something within certain parameters or whatever it was.
Pay the $35 for the other version.
It's all about balance. At the same time, there are console games that experiment with different structures, like Killer Instinct, right? Where they are able to give you the product faster, and Square with Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, as a fan of classic Final Fantasy, it sounds a little scary to me that the game is being broken into pieces made by different teams and may have different gameplay styles depending on what part of the game you're in, right? Like, it sounds a little scary, but at the same time, that sounds like a freaking awesome project too.
And you couldn't remake 7 and do it the way it came out. Like, that was 3 discs, that was 60 hours, that was just, I just don't know even what the lead time was on this thing. And one day we'll find out, but and
it's a big risk, and
it's huge risk.
Make no mistake about it, the Konami-Kojima break, there's more to that story than we know, right? It's not all Kojima is the good guy and got completely, got how you want to put it, like Konami is just the bad guy 100%, right? Everything they did was wrong. I'm sure there were issues with Konami just didn't have the money to fund a project of that length and didn't know in advance it was going to take that long or cost that much, right?
It sounds like there was definite beef, but one day we'll hear that story.
All the marketing and PR stuff was botched, right? There's no question about how they handled it was wrong. And the break definitely, you know, Konami could have done a much better job. But at the same time, like, that shows the risk of these mega productions, right? Like, not everybody can make a GTA.
Well, it also shows the risk of a company, in Konami's case, hitting it big on mobile and it really changing their strategy. Dragon Collection in Japan brought in so much money. Like, it makes sense. It's sad, but it made sense on how, to some degree, they said, well, if we can go low risk and make a splash like that, we should try doing more of those, which is, at the end of the day, sad for me because I'm always going to love Metal Gear. And Metal Gear is always going to be like that big sort of event of a video game, that thing that, you know, you wait in line for, you wait 6 months for, and you get excited about. Mobile doesn't have that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think it ever will.
And I think that obviously your fans are upset whenever a company changes direction and becomes something different, right? It happened with Rare too, where, you know, Rare was working on Kinect games and everybody said, well, that's not really what we wanted out of the studio. They're way more creative when you give them something, you know, to invent, or you give them, like, I mean, they did an awesome Mario game with Banjo-Kazooie, right? Like, give them something of substance like that.
Old school Nintendo fans should read. There's a fascinating interview about all that came out this week. Did you see that?
Yeah, that was cool.
Everyone should go check it out.
I think a lot of fans thought, like, oh, Microsoft is making Rare do all this, right? Obviously, that was a decision that the company made as well.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same with Konami, where it's like your first reaction is to say, oh, man, no, they're doing mobile games, but I love these big Konami productions. There's more to that story, obviously. Like, if a company cannot exist that way anymore, they need to shift gears. And, you know, the ideal outcome is that we still get the big Metal Gear games. We get Zone of the Enders sequels and Castlevania's 2D games. And it would be amazing if they figured out how to make that happen, right? But at the same time, like, they're the business realities.
That's exactly the struggle Nintendo's heading into in 2016. You know, that's exactly it. So it's going to be fascinating to see how all that plays out.
Yep,
for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so we are out of time, sadly, just because I am super jet lagged and. Yeah, we've got to skedaddle.
But you're super jet lagged because you put up an awesome interview with Kojima yesterday, right?
Yeah,
everyone should go see that.
Yeah, we flew out to Japan, super top secret, and I bought some cool stuff too. But we'll talk about it definitely more next year. But you should check out the piece. Some really good stuff. Really hard work from a lot of people.
Yeah, it was funny because like we've known about this project for a little while, obviously, and you know the initial announcement was like, you know, Kojima Productions has an ally that they're publishing their next game with that is not Konami, obviously. And we're like, well, who could it be? And we're talking about like the possible companies, right? Sony was the no-brainer, but at the same time, you're like, well, you know, it would limit them to one platform. Then we're like, Nintendo, we're like, nope, no way, right?
We did do that,
just
actually.
for the type of game that that Kojima creates, like it just isn't the right the right company. But I would love to hear, you know, Nintendo trying to do something again like they did with Capcom, right? Where they own a game, and I felt like Resident Evil 4 was so awesome, right? And that was such a great game to get for Nintendo. But maybe something that is a little bit more appropriate to the audience that they already have. You know?
And then we'll definitely we're going to spend the first couple weeks when we come back from break talking about 2015, looking back on how they did, where they improved, maybe where they didn't, Amiibo, all that. So look forward to that. But we've got to go. But we do want to wish you guys, first of all, a very happy holiday. Thank you very much for supporting us through another year of podcasting and another year of us talking, arguing, smiling, laughing, crying, all that stuff. We definitely appreciate your support. And sadly, you may not get an extra Christmas gift this year from us. We're still trying to figure out the logistics. but we all need vacations, man. Like, that's all I can say. Yeah, we all can use it. Anything you guys want to add for goodbye for the holidays?
Maybe there's like a second Christmas or something.
Maybe there's a second Festivus.
Yeah. Maybe there's like a post-Christmas
Festivus.
Yeah.
For the rest of us.
So the coolest thing is about our jobs is that, I mean, this has been a weird, kind of difficult year for Nintendo, but I feel like if you just played the games, you might have been disappointed with some and overwhelmed with joy at some others, but because of this show, we were able to find something entertaining to do throughout, whether things were good or bad. And for people who listen to us, I hope you could find the same thing. And it's been an honor and a pleasure doing the show for another year. And I can't wait for next year because things are about to get really weird and really crazy.
Things are going to get exciting again, right? Like
man.
I feel like being a Nintendo fan is the most fun when you don't know where it's going, right? Like once you know where it's going, if it's not the direction you like, you're like, oh man, you're bummed out. But when you don't know where it's going, it gets really interesting. Yeah. Lots of great speculation, lots of great talk.
But we think we know where it's going, and so far we're not sure.
No, we don't know where this
all
is
the
going.
Confusion.
It'll be really interesting. But
we've got mobile, the NX, that weird patent for that handheld with the oval shaped touchscreen. Who knows where things are going?
But I think one thing is clear, and that. Even when Nintendo tried to go more casual with the Wii and try to, with more hardcore with the GameCube, what comes out are fantastic games.
Yes, no matter what.
I want to make sure everybody remembers that we were playing Mario Kart last year and saying, this looks awesome. This is a game that doesn't have to hide behind the competition visually, effects-wise, content-wise. Then we got amazing DLC afterwards that didn't give up on it. We got a new franchise with Splatoon. We got Mario Maker, which is something they've never done to that extent before.
And we're getting Zelda.
And we got a big RPG like Xenoblade that you didn't think would ever exist on the Wii U.
No, and that game was definitely punching above its weight visually in terms of what it was going for.
So I think it is clear we'll continue to see awesome games, and I cannot wait to play Zelda, man.
Yep. All right. Well, there you have it. For the last time in 2015, this is the cast of Nintendo Voice Chat signing off. You know where to leave us feedback. You can head on over to iTunes, or you can email us at mvc@ign.com. Lastly, you can find us all on Twitter. You can find Mr. Per Schneider at
Star Wars. Oh, sorry, what? Per IGN?
So you can find Mr. Brian Altano, who's wearing a Wookiee coat.
Agent Bizzle. I actually I haven't been on Twitter in 4 days or any social media.
Smart man.
I'm trying to stay away from
It's hard to do. I find myself wanting to press on that button.
It is a very good test sort of run of why I should be doing that more often, because I realize how often I check those things, and it's nice to win off of this. But yeah, Star Wars.
Deleting it from my phone. Yeah. All right, and last, you said your Twitter
Agent
name,
Bizzle.
Right? There we go. All right, and
I'll talk to you in a few days after Star Wars.
Don't tweet at him.
Don't.
You can, I just won't see it.
And lastly, you can find me on Twitter, Jose_Otero. Thank you very much for listening to all us in 2015, and we'll be back with more Nintendo Voice Chat next year.
Get the thing.
See ya.